Metal is an incredibly broad genre of music. In its earlier iterations, it had much more in common with rock bands and with modern metal bands. I mean, isn't it crazy how two bands definitively in the same genre can sound like this versus this? So, how do we get from the slow atmospheric soundscapes of doom to the up-tempo barbarism of a subgenre like death metal? Well, obviously it didn't all happen overnight, but instead over the course of 29 years. 29 years of successive bands trying to be the most deplorably, brutally foul thing that anyone had heard. And 29 years of guys who pulled absolutely zero bitches listening to it. You can't talk about metal's origin without first speaking of Black Sabbath. They invented heavy metal because being in a shithole part of the world like Birmingham leaves you a few other choices.
Woke up in a fucking steaming mood, yeah? Because I live in a shithole! Do you know what I mean? Birmingham is a fucking shithole! I hate the fucking place! I fucking hate it! It's full of dickheads! I fucking hate it!
Tony Iommi lost the tips of his right-hand fingers in an accident at a sheet metal factory. To cope with his unique set of circumstances, he down-tuned his guitar, resulting in a heavier sound. He utilized power chords, tritones, and both natural and harmonic minor scales to create some evil-ass instrumentation. Paired with the darker occult lyricism of Ozzy Osbourne, the band crafted a demonic image, one that equally appalled and captivated the world, and kick-started metal's crusade towards the extreme. In the wake of Black Sabbath's rise to fame, a scene of bands were born trying to match Sabbath's impact and intensify the dark image they pioneered. This resulted in the founding of Venom, which brought the occult image to outright satanic. The image isn't the only thing this band ramped up. The music followed suit, with a more up-tempo, aggressive take on heavy metal. Rising in the second wave of British heavy metal, their sound was absolutely unique and revolutionary. Their debut, Welcome to Hell, as well as their sophomore album, Black Metal, spawned a genre that genuinely thought this was tough.
What is the fucking context? Why is this nigga dressed as like no?
And inspired the next breakthroughs towards death metal. The successors to Venom were numerous, and many releases attempted to emulate and outdo the lightning in the bottle that they captured. One such band you may have heard of was Metallica, with their debut release of Kill 'Em All, just a year and a half after Welcome to Hell. You want to hear something from them? Too bad. I don't need the police kicking down my door for daring to play a song in my little YouTube video that the current lineup probably didn't even write. Venom's true successors arrived 6 months later, and they had a drummer who could actually play in time. In 1983, Slayer would break out on the scene with Show No Mercy. Once again, a band wanted to push things to the absolute limit. The aggression, speed, and freaky-ass clothing were at an all-time high. While thrash was being pioneered by a great deal of talented bands, none would push the boundaries quite as much as Slayer. They continued Venom's use of explicit satanic imagery and also redefined what it means to sound heavy. Through technical riffs, aggressive kicks, and breakneck speeds, they pushed the agenda of what metal was. All this was coupled with a distorted shout that wasn't quite a scream, but not singing either. On their fourth studio album, Rain and Blood, their sound started to resemble what we know as death metal, especially because of the phrasing and disjointed, dissonant riffs present on the album. However, thrash had a problem. While Slayer pushed the genre's agenda musically, Metallica had made headway into the mainstream, which got a lot of people into metal. This was a good thing. The more people that are into something, the more we can connect. However, many felt that thrash had lost its edge. Gone were the days where metal was seen as an act of rebellion, but instead, an alternative culture trying to sell rebellion for a $20 t-shirt. People felt it lacked depth. It was this desire to make metal shocking again and the desire to push the music further that inspired Possessed to brew a heinous, evil-ass record. It was called Seven Churches, the first death metal album ever made. The record carried many trademarks of brutal thrash, such as blast beats, tremolo, and complex riffs. However, the major change is the vocals. The vocals have so much distortion, he's no longer singing, but instead, a growl.
Growl morning, morning.
The phrasing was also different. While still being brutally fast, it felt more disjointed than a typical thrash album. The next album to push the agenda and the album that solidified death metal in its sound was Scream Bloody Gore by the band Death, who boasts the most creative name in the entire genre. This album took Possessed sound and doubled down, seemingly removing a lot of thrash influence. The phrasing was disjointed and dissonant, some tempo changes were slowed down for impact, and on songs like Zombie Ritual, atmospheric slow sections gave it that death metal feel. While some still consider Seven Churches a brutal thrash album, Scream Bloody Gore is unmistakably something new. This record served as death metal's blueprint for many bands to come. It offered a tighter, more cohesive expression of death metal compared to Seven Churches, which did have some sloppy portions.
Big Justice, and this is the Big Sloppy.
With the sound defined by the pioneers through the late 80s and 90s would be the great golden age of death metal, featuring the most recognizable names: Morbid Angel, Deicide, Dying Fetus, Cannibal Corpse, Obituary, Bolt Thrower, Suffocation. These are all bands that are incredibly important to developing, innovating, and popularizing death metal sound. They created waves through the underground that centered in Tampa, Florida.
Oh my God, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy.
During this era, Tampa was like a cultural motherland for death metal, with most of the bands I listed being formed or moving there. As the 90s progressed, each of these bands would push each other heavier and heavier until the birth of brutal death metal, which may be the most redundant subgenre ever created. But this is still death metal, so every time someone doesn't play the exact same thing as everyone else, it's a brand new subgenre. Speaking of important subgenres, the brutal death metal band Suffocation from up in New York released their debut album, Effigy of the Forgotten. This was a successful death metal album that expanded upon the sound in its own right, but one single riff off the album's opening track, Legion of Veracity, would go on to change death metal forever and birth Slam. Slam is death metal, but stripped of any technicality or speed in exchange for brutal, fat riffs. The end result is what sounds like a knuckle-dragging gorilla smashing a garbage can with that one homeless dude who has a guitar at any downtown in California. The band that would go on to define this sound for many would be Devourment, who came around in the mid-90s. But of course, regardless of subgenre, all these bands would sound the same to anyone who is employed.